everyone. This is Myrurgia Hernández, as I had mentioned to you before. She is a member of the faculty at the University of the Bahamas. She actually started their first interpreting program at that institution. She currently teaches Spanish also. So, Miru, I'll have you take us down the road to find out how far our voices can take us.
Okay. Good evening again, everybody. So it's a very interesting journey, knowing that you have a voice that is not necessarily designed to sing, but that you can actually use to enhance your life as an individual and as a professional as well. So welcome to this session. And we will be going through the topic, as Gio said, how far can your voice can take you, or how far can your voice take you in a question mode. And we will see how we have been able to take persons who were home doing nothing in the Bahamas to becoming interpreters, earning a decent salary as a result of our mission, which is to increase tourism in the Bahamas through the use of language facilities. So Gio already spoke a bit about me, which it's perhaps gives you the understanding of what gives me the authority to share information on this topic with you. Okay, so we will go ahead now. Okay. Now, before we can go on, we have to, we're going to go quickly over the topic. Many of us already know the difference, but we have to understand the difference between translation and interpretation. We had that issue here in the Bahamas where not only translation and interpretation was considered to be the same, but a bilingual was also considered an interpreter. So for many years, we had matters in court and persons who would teach Spanish in the classrooms at even primary school level. People from the court system would say, you speak Spanish? Come, we need you in court. So, and that is an issue that many of us can relate to. So we had to start back in 2005 by teaching the population and raising awareness. First of all, we had to differentiate what is a bilingual, what is a translator, and what is an interpreter. So here, in a very brief way, a quick definition of a translation, of course, is an act of process of finding written equivalences, as we know. So in all essence, we can say that translation is written and interpretation is spoken. Many years ago, interpretation, as many of you should know, used to be called oral translation. And that's where we have evolved into becoming simultaneous interpreters or what's not. So let's go further. What or who is an interpreter? So of course we have, the most common form that we know interpreting to be two persons who want to speak to each other, but they are unable to understand each other because they do not speak the same language. And we could find that in many different settings. So of course the interpreter then becomes the facilitator, right? And, we have all kind of different interpretations and techniques and modes and all of that. And we also know that there is a lot of dispute because some people say there are only two, there are three, there are more, but that is not really the issue today. Today, we will really see how far your voice can take you as a human being, and especially if you're interested in the language field. So let me speak to you about our experience in the Bahamas. Because we are a tourism-driven country for many years, the country was just focused on selling sun, sand, and sea. So many persons didn't realize that there are other countries with the same beautiful resources that had similar things to offer. So when we started this industry, we started International Cultural Limited in 2005, we decided that we will help the country to increase tourism through use of language facility. But first we had to start training people and we had to show them the difference that I mentioned before. And we had to show them that the country has so much more to offer. So they only used to think about Junkanoo, our main carnival. By the way, feel free to come to the Bahamas. This is an unofficial invitation. I'll allow Conviti do the official invitation later. So Junkanoo has always been a very attractive cultural form because it's unique to the Bahamas. But the Bahamian Ministry of Tourism didn't realize that John Coney could even be interesting to persons who didn't speak their language. So we decided to incur into business meetings. And that's where we, interpreters, come in and can help to develop tourism in our countries. So we began hosting different type of conferences, and not only English speaking persons started to become invited, but persons speaking the other language. So we started to train interpreters to just at least assist with participants that speak the main languages of the region. And Gio had the opportunity to help me to train the first cohort of interpreters. And as she mentioned, we do have a program in the University of the Bahamas, and we can speak on that a bit later. So we started then by raising awareness. At some point, the Ministry of Tourism with the Hotel Association allow us to, and sponsored it. Actually, Gio was here as well for that opportunity. We gave a seminar where we were teaching the nation opportunities in the interpreting field and in the career. What is it that they could do? So we could teach them about the difference in translating, interpreting, being bilingual. And so we started to show them how far their voice can take them. And so we showed them all of these different contexts and settings in which interpreting could take place, so that they can not only view tourism as a sun, sand, and sea, but that they could also develop intellectual tourism. And as a result of that, we were able to see an increase in conferences from Latin America. All the LATAM meetings started to come to the country and host their annual meetings and their incentive trips, etc. So now that we know the difference between a translator and an interpreter, let's make it clear that translators and interpreters perform very similar tasks. But of course, we know the settings are different, because a translator will be writing while an interpreter will be speaking. Now, the most exciting interpreting form, at least for me, is the booth. I love that booth. The adrenaline, I love it. And because I love that, I also like to help people to become proficient, on doing so. So what type of interpretations are there? Of course, there are many debates and there are many theories out there, but the truth is that we will always find these two main settings. Now, we are not excluding sight reading at all. It's only that these are the two main settings, which are consecutive and simultaneous. Because even with sight reading, you will find that in conferences, you may have to resort to sight reading, but at the end of the day, most of the time it's going to happen on a simultaneous mode. So when do we see this type of interpreting? And consecutive mainly will be in court. And of course, you will also have, when you are like a liaison interpreter in depositions and when you are in negotiations and what's not. However, different areas, different countries, different people call it different ways. But as long as you are not speaking in real time, you can consider that you are speaking consecutively. Now, I have noticed that even in interpreting simultaneously while in the booth, it's interesting when we find those speakers that are not, I don't think they can even understand themselves. So we have to sort of kind of mix the simultaneous with the consecutive, because you cannot probably go in real time. So you may have to like kind of pause to grab the idea. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. But this is mainly the consecutive scenario. And simultaneous, of course, like I said to you, that's my passion. Local conferences, international conferences, business retreats, even on telephone interpreting nowadays, you can actually find both. Now, if you are on a direct call, of course, you will have to use the consecutive technique. But and Gio and Marcia are much better than I am in mentioning all these new technologies out there. There are softwares and technology that actually allow you to do simultaneous interpretation while telephone interpreting. Okay, so let's talk about this sight translation and simultaneous interpretation. Yes, they have similarities, but really and truly, when you go to college, for example, to study interpretation, after you have learned to consecutive interpretation and liaison, first, if I recall the order, we learn liaison first, which also can be called bilateral. then we learn consecutive, then we learn sight reading, because sight reading is really the initial training for simultaneous. And that is basically how we also train our interpreters, because it's a way for them to teach them to start looking for information with their eyes and what processing with the brain. Okay, at the same time. So you have the similarities there, the differences, not limited to those, but we decided to just highlight the most common denominators. So how much do you think your voice can make? Let's think about this Grammy Award winning artist. It's amazing how a person without a professional or academic background suddenly rises and they're living the life. But that is not different to you. You don't have to be a performer, or you don't have to be a Hollywood singer or an international singer to live the life and to have a good future. You have a voice, and it's a gift. So your voice is an asset. And so you can use your voice to live that life, to live your passion, to share your knowledge. There's so much more than you can do. So your voice can take you around the world. Now, around the world, I don't want you to limit that around the world to an airplane and a passport. Of course, we have that picture there, but the passport is the physical around the world scenario. But right now, I'm in the Bahamas and I'm talking to you. And many of you are not in the Bahamas. So my voice is now taking me around the world without having to move or spend money in a plane ticket or go through all of that search that we all have to go through nowadays. Okay, very good. Now, as I'm doing the presentation, feel free to start typing your questions so that if possible, I can assist you, or at the end we can answer them. Now, there are many opportunities afforded, like I said. Now, we have different scenarios, different settings. Technology is really a helper, even though as professionals, when we hear about these new technologies, we tend to kind of panic. Oh my God, they have this interpreting device. I want you to understand and be aware. The human brain I would say it is very difficult to replace, if not impossible. You have to understand there's a reason why we do immersion. You can understand the language, but you having the ability to convey the message with the same intention, with the same weight, that is something that is not very easy for computers to do. Even when we are translating and using CAD tools, we have to help the CAD tool to finalize. We have to localize the terminology. We have to localize the context. So I don't want you to panic because of technology. I want you to be aware of the fact that technology is actually your friend. And your technology, if you understand how to use it and you understand the benefits afforded to you with technology, you should be able to take advantage of it and become more marketable by way of technology. So interpreters can also work through international assignments. Now, you understand now that the international assignment does not necessarily mean that you have to physically be there. You can be there remotely. But then there's another benefit, networking. Now, I am speaking to you because of a networking possibility that came about as a result of meeting Gio, who I met online. Isn't that wonderful? And so we realized that we have similar passions, we have similar knowledge, we have the passion to teach, we like to convey what we know. And so we decided to network and work together. And so even though when there are projects that are not directly involving International Culture Limited, we are able to assist and support because that network opportunity helps us. Not only that, when you work for different projects, you get to know different people, and they get to understand your capacity, your potential, and your abilities. You can always count on good referrals. Many times your resume is read and put in the corner because that employer or client is not going to hire your services unless he or she receives a a good report from someone they consider a trustworthy source. So I want you to understand that networking is actually nowadays more important than your CV. Your CV is awesome, but if you do not have somebody that can vouch for your skills, many times you will not be afforded the opportunity. And that, of course, we call it politics. And yes, it does happen. Okay, so there are many opportunities that can come about as a result of networking. Now, there is something so valuable in our profession that you cannot really trade for anything else. It's knowledge. Like Gio said, of course, she's trying to say that I'm so busy, and if that wasn't enough, I decided to go on and study a doctorate in education. Yes, the thing is that when you become an interpreter, especially in conferences, and you deal with so many topics, your brain gets addicted to knowledge, and all of a sudden you just want to know more. But it's not that you want to know for you. You want to know more because you want to become more valuable, so you can offer a better service, so that your clients actually can benefit from this knowledge and gift that you have. We say here in the Bahamas that when you have a gift, the gift is not for you, it's for the people. And if you think about it, if you have the gift of learning languages, it's really not for you. Because yes, you can travel around and you can communicate, but if you enhance your gift to the point of becoming an interpreter, then look what happens. You end up being a vehicle of communication and networking for others. So your brain is a valuable source that you can exploit by way of acquiring added knowledge on a daily basis once you become as an interpreter, because you will need to read, you will need to stay updated with current affairs, you will need to understand new technologies. You never know what your presenters or your facilitators are going to talk about, because the truth is that we receive these PowerPoint presentations, but come on, interpreters, how many times do they really go by what is on the screen? I can tell you that almost never, if not never. So we have to be prepared, and we have to continue to feed our brain with new knowledge. We have to acquire new subject matter, and that makes you more valuable, because that means that you will not only be recommended as a legal or business interpreter. You can bridge the gap between legal and medical and so many others, and technical, and the list goes on. There's so much to learn. There are so many new markets developing, and you become not only an interpreter now, after you have acquired so much knowledge, many times you even end up becoming a consultant. And then suddenly you're not only the consultant, you're a recruiter, because you have so much knowledge that you are able to tell your client, especially when we are having large events, you would tell them, okay, I am going to help you. This is the person that I recommend for this field. Room number 1 dealing with this area of expertise, room number 2, and you end up enhancing your services and therefore your value. So it actually redefines your skill through the different environments. And so that is what has been happening for persons who, like Gio, Marcia, myself. Yes, we've been interpreting for years, but after a while, the knowledge that you acquire is so vast that you realize that it makes no sense keeping it in. You need to share it. And as you share your knowledge, you end up really becoming an asset to event planners.
Me too.
Now let's talk about other opportunities like the ones we have. Yes.
Hi, Miru. Now, what I was going to say is that what you just stated is absolutely true. Many times I am called upon not to go to an event, but to refer somebody. They call me. I have not capitalized on this yet, but that's another possible job for me, finding the interpreters to do the job for somebody else. One of our colleagues here attending, Iris, asked a question. She wants to know, on average, how many days do you work a month? And out of those days, how many are through technology, like remote interpreting?
Okay. Well, because the Bahamas was a place where the language industry was not developed when we started, we have a unique position, which might not be the same for your area or your country. Um, we either work when events come to the Bahamas, or we are at the point when we create the events. So, on average, I'll say that yearly we work a minimum of like 20 conferences, but in between we are training, which has basically become a mini conference because we do have participants from other countries.
Solar flare going through. Miru has frozen. So the next portion of the question is how many of those days have to do with using technology? I think I can venture to say that very few times they use remote interpreting in the Bahamas from what I have seen in terms of availability in that country. We're going to be waiting until Miru can join us again. I believe she had to get off to come back on. So the answer for you then, Iris, would be that Miru doesn't have much experience with remote interpreting the way that we do here in the United States with telephonic, VRI, VoIP. I have done a conference, for example, where I had panelists in front of me. I was in a booth, and the broadcast was going all the way over to another set of attendees in Brazil. There were about 800 people in front of us, me and my colleague in the booth. And in Brazil, there were over 1,000 university students listening to what we were doing. So that was a hybrid, in person and remote. And it was very interesting, and I loved it because we had an opportunity also, my colleague and I, to test the accuracy of the work we were doing, because here are the panelists saying A, B, C, D, and the people from Brazil sent us a question, and the question was actually relevant, and it related to what had been said by that panelist. And from there, we would then reply to the individual in Brazil who would go back, and somebody else, somebody else who was in Brazil would then ask another question. So this was a very interesting situation. I'm going to put my video back on because we may be having issues with the Bahamas. It happens sometimes, and I apologize. Yesterday we had a 2-hour meeting without any issues. So what we see, thank you, you're welcome, Armando. So what we see a lot going on for us interpreters, for those of you in the audience who are not very familiar and curious about the work we do, what we see a lot of is in-person events with a remote group, okay, with a remote group of interpreters. I remember, when was it? 3 weeks ago or so. This is exactly what happened to me. Everybody thinks that the life of the conference interpreter is always glamorous. No, it isn't. So here we are in another country. Yes, but I was not in the room. I was in the traffic area of the hotel, which is unfinished, no AC. The booths were hot, miserably hot, and very difficult conditions to work under. So we did. We did work. We did request them to assist us in bringing some sort of ventilation so we could breathe. And the work was great. We did a great job there. Yes, a literal sweatshop. Yes. So, so this is one of those situations. Even though you're going, the glamorous thing of traveling abroad, the conditions of work are not acceptable. And that's one of the things we as professionals have to, emphasize and discuss with our employees. I think Miru is coming back to us. Let me bring her back as a panelist here. Yay. Miru, we need to see your video.
Yes.
You have to turn your video on and I'll turn mine off. While Miru does that, I'll say that as we are now, some of us here in the United States, some of us in Mexico, some of us in Brazil, so these situations are also taking your knowledge out into the world. So it's not the physical trip, the physical movement of your body beyond borders that counts. When we talk about how far your voice can take you, the video is lost. Let me make this big. Sorry. And thank you. Okay. I think Miru is trying to get her screen up. Yeah. So it is the issue then becomes client education, and client education has to take place first and foremost outside of the work environment before you get there, before you get contacted, before you get invited to do the job. That's the type of work that AIC is trying to do, that we as professionals do through our blogs. Roberta does a magnificent job with that. I get goosebumps, and you wish you could see my goosebumps. I get goosebumps when I talk about what she writes. She is wonderful, really. Okay, I love the way she writes. I know she writes mostly for us interpreters, but there is a part of the work she does in her writing that has to do with client awareness, because the clients also have to understand there are politics in the booth, there are issues in the booth that they need to be aware of to help us with. It is extremely important. So you have a blog, please write about your issues, okay? Tell your clients what is important for them to do. So to facilitate your job, I wrote an article not too long ago, specifically to clients, telling them that it's necessary for us interpreters to have access to material way ahead of time. They deliver the PowerPoints when we are in the booth. Excuse me? That will only create anxiety. That is only going to create a problem. So Aaron, so welcome. You didn't even need a passport to cross borders today. Aaron is saying this is his first international meeting. Yeah. So it is very important for us to communicate to the clients what it is that we have to do. Okay, Miru, we got your image now. Good. Yes, Roberto,
Okay,
I agree. So in
great.
Brazil, we also have too many intermediaries, and yeah, just like in Mexico, and that is a problem. That is a problem that we need to take care of. So, Miru, I'll give you back
Sí,
your computer. So there you go. I'll stop my
muchas
video and mute
gracias.
myself. De
I,
nada, mi amor. Gracias a usted.
I do hope that you can all hear me. And so it looks like it's best to use the microphone, and we'll have to leave the image for another day, another occasion. So, Gio, can you please give me an indication that you can hear me? If you can hear me, that means everybody else is able to.
Yes, my sweetheart. We can all hear you.
Okay, great. So we were talking about the different settings, and so I want to talk about technology, which you can see that it's not always perfect. However, it's still our friend because it still allows us to go beyond our present location. Okay, so let's talk about the broadcast processes. Actually, this is a topic that we can do a whole webinar on it due to the amount of technologies and tools and softwares that are available to us. We have nowadays we have remote consecutive interpreting, remote simultaneous interpreting. We have different kind of broadcast processes like Buslingo, Voice Boxer, remote interpreting, Linguali, which is another technology, which is actually is beyond just the booth. Because remember, we mainly were used to court setting, interpret simultaneous conference setting, and what's not. So it's so much available there to us, and that's why we have to think of how far can our voice take us. Because let's say you are not in the position to travel, you can do it right from home. Once you have the proper technology, you can interpret the world from your world. And I want you to consider that as you might be thinking of perhaps joining this industry. Okay. Now, let's talk about one of the things that can really help you when you become an interpreter. And I like to speak about conference interpreting because, as we know, it is, let's say, we can call it the maximum expression in the linguistic field. I'm not speaking about linguistics as a field of study. I'm saying as an expression. I'm saying because, I don't want to be corrected in that area because there's so much to learn and so much to do. However, in terms of physically expressing yourself in different languages, I like to compare simultaneous interpreting to, in the medical field, we always think that the general surgeon is the top person because they basically can just operate patients and, in any setting, any level, any area. I would like to compare simultaneous interpreting in that level because it's basically, at least to me, the maximum expression of linguistic expression in terms of speaking into I'm from different languages. But let's see how that has to do with public speaking. You could actually take yourself from the booth to public speaking. Actually, I want you to think of how many persons are interpreters, trainers, or conference speakers and came from the interpreting field. Because what I'm doing right now, I'm speaking to you, but I did not always have the ability. It was not always easy, right? So let's see. Public speaking can actually help you to enhance your voice projection. All right. Now, in public speaking, you have to plan appropriately. You have to practice, engage your audience, pay attention to body language, think positively, cope with your nerves, watch recording of your speeches, and so on. Now, let's see. Do you want to become a great interpreter? It's basically the same principle. Study your area, practice, engage your listeners, look at the similarities. So that means that once you become an interpreter, your voice can take you beyond just interpreting. You can also become a public speaker. And the only great, I think you have what it takes to become an interpreter. If you were thinking of perhaps joining the interpreting field or changing, or if you were just a translator and you said, let me try to see if interpreting is for me. Or maybe you are just a journalist major or a communication major, how they call it nowadays, and you are thinking that maybe interpreting is for you. It could be for you. Yes, we do have to manage stress. We do have positive and negative stress when you are dealing with a profession, just like in any other profession. It's not something that is not manageable. It's not anything that may not be applicable to you. You still have to, be mentally ready, have to be alert. You have to control your reaction. And what's no, you have persons who are speaking and they come out of nowhere with certain expressions and do certain things, and you still have to sound good and prepared, and you have to make some tough decisions. Do I repeat the same things that I'm listening to that sounds like nonsense, or do I use it and go around and convey the message and make sure that I do not sound as low vocabulary, as a low vocabulary user, which sometimes it does happen, and we need to make the best decision. So of course we also have to understand how to keep calm, manage our stress. But you can become an interpreter if you are not. And if you are, you could always enhance yourself and enhance your services and ensure that you not only stay being an interpreter, you could always grow from there and do other things. See, interpreting also improves your ability, not only to command the booth, it also can help it gives you the boldness to actually go into leadership position. So I want you to think of interpreting as something that can really make your professional abilities more valuable. Now, one of the things that I notice about interpreters is that, and I can say this at a personal level, somebody can be speaking to me and say something that may not sound too well, and because I am able to understand and comprehend the intention of the speaker, my interpreting mind is able to listen and process the message. And at that moment, I have that split attention kind of mode that I'm able to understand, interpret, and react as an interpreter as opposed to take messages on a personal level. And that is something very good because interpreting can actually enhance your life as a whole. It's my personal opinion. So the brain of an interpreter is a very interesting thing, because do you imagine continuously having to have your brain ready to switch back and forth and always have the correct expression on the tip of your tongue? That means that can almost guarantee that for the most you are politically correct. However, we have to be mindful because of the ability that we now have acquired by way of enhancing our knowledge by becoming ourselves more valuable as an interpreter. We do have, we sometimes are in a vulnerable position. Yes, we tend to be not treated as good as we would like to, and we end up sometimes working overtime. Sometimes we have to be very careful. So it is our job to teach our clients and to show them what is best for them without having to fight or speak to them rudely or speak to them strongly. There are many ways of doing it, and studying and preparing yourself as an interpreter will also give you that ability. We have to be mindful of not working overtime. We also have to explain to our clients why you should never be the single interpreter in the booth, why you should not work during extensive periods. And I want you to be very aware of the fact that your voice is such a good of an asset that if somebody records your voice without your consent, they actually can capitalize on that product. So that means that you do not know how many times your voice has been recorded, and your voice is making you money that you have never acquired. So you have to ensure that you give your clients terms and conditions, that you let them know that if your voice is going to be recorded, then there is a separate fee. that if this is for the intention of, reproduction, or if they're going to sell it or otherwise, you are to be advised so you could charge accordingly. And you need to ensure that in your terms and conditions, you express if the terms and conditions discussed and agreed upon, you have the right to proceed with legal action. So you also have to ensure now that you have all of this knowledge, you are not overworked and underpaid. Your voice takes you far is that you need to identify the persons that you are more comfortable working with. You don't want to work with a colleague that you like a lot but is not knowledgeable of the subject for you, and you end up doing all the work all by yourself. And that happens a lot. I'm sure many of us can attest to that. And so you also want to ensure that you work with a booth partner that is knowledgeable in similar subject areas. And if you know that the person does not have the capacity to perform at that level, then perhaps you can be you can advise either the person or the client in a very professional way, because I want you to understand that when you go inside that booth, there's no competition. If one person fails in the booth fails. It doesn't matter if they hear the female voice or the black voice or the white voice. It's not about race, culture, gender. It's beyond that. It's a team that has been entrusted the capacity to convey the message and to make the speakers sound good. And because that is the reason why you were hired, you have to ensure that you and your team are able to perform to that capacity. So in essence, I would say that your voice can take you, whether physically or technically, just as far as you allow your knowledge to take you. Your voice is an asset. Your voice is a gift that you are to use wisely. You have to protect your voice. You have to eat properly. You have to ensure that you do not give away your gift, because as interpreters, since we are all in the communication field, we like to talk. But please ensure that when you are speaking, you are either teaching, enhancing your ability, enhancing somebody else's ability or knowledge. Take care of your voice. That's what singers do. And remember, without you in the room is not working properly. It's not functioning properly. So your voice can take you as far as your mind can. So I want you to protect your voice and acknowledge that you have the capacity to learn and make yourself more valuable and make yourself a professional that is known not only just for speaking or not just because of what your resume says, but because your brain has so much to offer that once you get in that room, everybody knows that communication, and that is effective communication, is taking place. Okay, so I do hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. And if Gio or Marcia have anything to add, and to the presentation, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Miru. We have some comments. Armando, for example, is also a teacher, and he's a speaker as far as I know. He's a great interpreter too. I have had the chance to work with him, and I am trying to give him the microphone, but once in a while, yeah, I just have to fight with this machine over here. Armando, you're gonna give me a second. I'm looking for you among the speakers. I found you. Where are you? You're there. So Armando, I believe you may speak. You can unmute yourself if you're muted, and we should be able to hear you.
Okay, now you should be able to hear me.
Yes, now we can
Hey.
hear you, love. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I also teach translation and interpretation studies. The one
Awesome.
contribution that I have to this wonderful presentation that has given us an overview of the way in which our voice can take us further is when I teach interpretation for conference purposes. When we have visual material, visual aids to help, we always have to go with a sound feed. And there were people that I was training that got so enamored of the PowerPoints that they didn't realize their speaker was straying off topic and telling an anecdote, and they kept going reading off a prepared document. So I make the distinction of calling those material sight interpretation to distinguish them from sight translation mode. Always
Hmm.
emphasizing that you have to follow the sound feed, not the visual aids to help supplement and complement the sound feed in your work in the booth.
Yes.
That's a good one. Yes, that's
Yes.
very true.
I totally agree. When we train students, yes, that's a very valid point, and thank you so much for your contribution. We actually advise students to use the presentation as a point of reference rather than just using the presentation to interpret. And I believe, if I'm correct, it's basically what you are um, saying. Um, but yes, I totally agree. You cannot just depend on the visual. Um, as interpreters, we know the visuals do not always work, and that is when we do have them.
When we do have them.
Yes.
Yes.
So the sound feed, you're totally right. You're totally right. It's
And
definitely a help.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Armando. You're saying something? Oh, hold on.
a little
You're
bit of
muted.
prep
Sorry.
if
Go
you
ahead.
know the subject matter or the speaker that you will be interpreting for. It always pays off to do a little YouTube search. Maybe they do their speech several times a year for different associations. And so it helps to be prepared by doing a little bit of research. And also, if possible, if organizers think of us enough to allow us to meet up with the presenter before they do and keep them in tune with what we need to do our job, which is hand signals, if they're straying away from the microphone, if they intend to tell a joke, all those things will pay off beautifully at the end.
Yeah. Robert and I had a wonderful experience at a conference that Miru organized in the Bahamas. We had a motivational speaker, Peter Docker. He came and we had no materials, no nothing. But the day before, he came over and he gave us a sheet of paper with the words that he was going to be using, the names that he was going to be saying, because some of them were foreign. And we would have no way if he went and said, Jada Gilza, yeah, I know what that is. But did you understand that name? And Roberto even wrote an article about it. He loved the article, by the way. So he provided that information for us to use not as a crutch, but for us not to get lost. They were little crumbs as he was going along. He wrote them in the order they appeared in his talk, which allowed us to relax, follow him very closely, and be as or appear to be as knowledgeable as he was, convey his message just as strongly, as forcefully in Portuguese. Because, as I said, he was a motivational speaker. So he was not talking like this. He was talking like this because you are supposed to listen, understand, apprehend that knowledge, and apply it. So he was being stern and forceful without being rude, and we had to convey that. And if we didn't feel confident in what we had to portray, to convey to the people, we would not be able to have portrayed his voice the way he intended. Plus, he's a man, and here are two women trying to say what he's saying, and that, man, it was twice as difficult for us. Yeah. Roberta wants to say something, so let me get you here. This always takes me a little bit of time, but no, really, it was an experience that I'll never forget. I love doing the what do you call it? Motivational speakers. It's one of my favorite things to do. Roberta, you should be able to find a little microphone to the bottom left of your screen, and you mute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi guys.
Hola.
There's a little bit of a delay, I think. Anyway, so the contribution I wanted to make on what Gio was saying about Peter Docker is that not only did he give us the paper a couple of minutes before we started interpreting so that we had an idea of the terminology he was going to use and the little anecdotes he was going to tell, but also in the middle of the presentation, he said, he was trying to make a point. Peter Docker is all about the why. He says, whatever you do, you always have to take into account the why you're doing it. Be it a business, be it a relationship, whatever it is that you do, right?
Yep.
So one of the aspects that he takes into account and that he considers to be a priority is to build relationships. So in the middle of presentation, he says, he started talking about the need of creating relationships, and he uses the interpreters. He uses what he did as an example for that. So he says, it's important to create a relationship, blah, blah, blah. For instance, when I came here, I immediately talked to the interpreters and I said hello and I gave them a paper with a little script of what I was going to talk about in order to create a relationship. So it's extremely wise of him not only to prepare us in terms of terminology, but also, in fact, creating this relationship with the interpreters, because we were so fond of him at this point that we were like, we just want to convey this message as better possible, you know, because we were fond of him. The guy was just amazingly nice.
Yep.
And the other thing I like to say, since we're talking about voice and the importance of the voice and how far it can take us, I have been kind of specializing in retreats and gurus, motivational speakers, etc. And recently, I've interpreted for a retreat from the One World Academy. It's a retreat in India. And I was interpreting this retreat, and you can imagine it being a meditation retreat, there's a completely different way that you use your voice for that. I can't say, now close your eyes and breathe deeply. No, it has to go something like, close your eyes, breathe deeply, inhale. It's a completely different use of my voice for when I do the meditation retreats. And it was amazing that the last one that I did at the end of 3 days of interpreting for them, everybody, I would say, like, I'm not exaggerating, but something like 90% of the audience, a 270 people audience, most of them listening to the interpretation, they came to me and they said, I love your translation, because of course they didn't know that was interpretation. So I love your translation and your voice. Oh my God, I love your voice. Without any exaggeration, I would say that 85% of the audience mentioned my voice specifically. So it is not only about the words, it is not only about interpreting with accuracy. That is important too. But the way you modulate your voice for a specific thing that you're doing makes a world of difference to your listener. And when I go to Tony Robbins, for instance, which was my last assignment, by coincidence, it was my last assignment. Tony Robbins is a very intense guy. So my voice for him is a completely different voice. I go like, say yes, say yes, say yes. So I just wanted to make this contribution since we're talking about voice and really it's very important.
You are so right. You are so right, Roberta. Yes, it's very important. And well, I'm sure many of us have many incidents, um, especially with the voice. I'm in the Bahamas, and most of the meetings that are hosted here are LATAM meetings, or companies from the West Indies, so forth and so on. So there was an incident in which a minister from a West Indian nation came to me and said he always knows when my voice is on, because my voice make him feel so relaxed. And it's funny the things that you hear and all of that, right? But what he does not understand is not that he was not only hearing my voice, I was basically imitating the tone of the speaker. The speaker was a female that had this kind of appealing voice. So in spite of my voice, I was actually imitating what she was doing, because I was trying to get the message. That was her intention, and that is very interesting. So not only to interpret the message and deliver the message, but like I said before, the intention, the weight of the message, the with the technicality, the register, keep it at the same level. Now, in speaking about preparation for a conference, this is very, very touching to many of us interpreters, because we always want to have the information on time. But can I say to you that here in the Bahamas, most of the time we have to interpret conferences only with a preliminary agenda? Sometimes we do not even have the final agenda. And so if it wasn't because of the ability of preparing for the conference, the research, like our dear colleague Armando was saying, yes, preparing, researching, going on and trying to find out the minutes for the last meeting, trying to see when was the last meeting, where was it held, who was in attendance, what did they talk about, and sometimes we do not even know the organization that is hosting it, because many times we do receive we are hired by a third party. I know that doesn't sound conventional, but we are a third party. Is the planner, then is the hotel, the event planner, and then the client is actually like the sixth person. And many times clients do not like to release their information because they are launching a new brand, and it is our duty to raise awareness and teach our clients and let them know that, listen, your brand is so important to us that we want your product to sound as if you are speaking about your own product in your client's language. So we normally say we speak to your clients in their own language. However, they don't understand that. So how do you do when you want to be the best interpreter ever, but you're not even allowed the opportunity to get to the event with sufficient knowledge? So that's why it's so important to have a booth partner that understands how to cope with stress, that has general knowledge of vocabulary, high register that can go up and down in register. And not only that, to have a booth partner that has been sufficiently exposed. Should you have to interpret for a speaker whose English or any of your languages that you work in is not their first language, so you could understand? Because there's nothing like interpreting for somebody who believes they speak the language they're speaking into, and we all know they don't really speak it. However, what do? We stop the conference and say, no, we can't do that. So it is our job to continue to stay knowledgeable and to research and to understand who the client is, even if at the last minute. And of course, like Roberta was saying in one of her comments, a good night's sleep. And I tell my students sometimes, A good night's sleep is more important than you staying awake all night reading the entire presentation. Why do I say that? If you stay all night awake reading the presentation that came at the last minute, it's like going to a final exam. What you didn't learn until the final exam, you are not going to learn it, period. So how are you going to allow your brain to react quickly if your brain is not rested? When you know that lack of sleep causes you to lose the ability to react quickly, to process information, to convey the message with speed, and so on. Not only that, it affects your mood, and so many things are attached to that. And then also proper diet. We had an event that was on a budget, and they decided they were going to give us cold sandwiches for lunch. And not only, at least if they would have given us a tuna sandwich, come on, we can use fish and wake up the brain. But they gave us turkey, turkey sandwich. So all of that is very important. So you need to put it in black and white. Tell your client, listen, we do have a specific diet, turkey, no, whatever it is. You have to ensure, you tell your client, please ensure that water is in the booth at all times. Kindly ensure that coffee is available, because many of us stay on coffee and tea to stay awake. Yeah, that's the truth. And so all of these things that you need, you have to ensure that your client knows. Your client sometimes is not doing these things on purpose. In many occasions, they just do not know any better. As far as they are concerned, you are just a good bilingual person. I'm sorry to hurt your feelings, but they do not think of us based on what our skill. They really think of us as the good bilingual that is going to help us to get through the conference. So don't take it personal. It's your job to show them the difference. It's your job to explain to them the difference, and it's your job to make them aware of the fact that you want their conference to be as successful as they do. And can you please allow them to, even if you have to be in the pre-con meeting, if you're organizing the interpreters. So that's my 5 cents, like we say in the Bahamas. I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, the United States, people here are cheaper. We say 2 cents. Yeah, we are cheaper. No, really, it is very interesting that there is one common thread, which is educate your client. And this is a job for all of us. You who are starting, you need to go to the IEC website to learn what your rights are. You need to read articles. All over the place, there are articles that talk about that. There is the open mic, theopenmic.co. There are many articles on Medium. LinkedIn is full of articles from interpreters. IEC has a Facebook page called Interpreting the World. If you do a search on Facebook for that, you're going to find a lot of information, and everything on IEC is for public access. They're part for the membership, but they have a lot for public access. You feel like you found this treasure chest of information. It is great. So you have to learn, you have to prepare yourself. When I was administrator of the Interpreters Division, we created a project to gift to the ATA, the American Translators Association, which is a booklet that they later published called Interpreting, Getting It Right. And it specifically talks about what someone who is looking for interpreting services needs to know. We are going to update it soon. I believe we have 2 more prints already done, and we have to wait until they're finished with the distribution of those. And maybe in 3 years, we're going to start delivering the updated version of it. But it was, yeah, it was a great project. Chris Durbin did the editing, part of the copyright. She's mentioned there too. It is client education. It is our responsibility. We who know better, we can write articles, and you who are learning, who are coming into the field, ask questions. Right here, you have Amiru, you have Armando, you have me, and there are many other colleagues here who have not spoken up, but who are present. Evelyn, for example, was just talking to me over chat. Go ahead. We are available for you to reach out to us. If you have our names, you can do a search on LinkedIn, on Google, and find how to get in touch with us. Okay? And as Miro said before, we interpreters love to talk. It's already 7:15, and if there are no other questions, I will close our conversation because I think we can go on forever over here. Thank you. You have been great. I hope we answered all your questions. We are going to have this video up on the web in a little while. I mean, it might take a few days, like 2 or 3 days, because I want to write an article about the takeaways from this. Okay? So please stay in touch. The website on Facebook, if you guys didn't get it, is facebook.com/convti.com. And we do, no, ConVTI 2017, I apologize. ConVTI 2017. And yes, ConVTI is coming. Thank you, Roberta. It is coming. We are going to be having the event the 26th and the 27th. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. And we have more coming for you. Sue from Switzerland is going to be talking to us about confidentiality. So, yes, next month. See you guys. Thank you so very much. Good night to all of you. Ciao.